Hi, everyone. I'm NewsNOW from Fox's digital journalist, Rain Augustine. Currently, I'm joined with political analyst Mark Mill. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rain. Thank you
Thank
very
you. So,
much.
Mark, first things first, Wednesday, we do have the vice presidential debate that is going to be held at the University of Utah. So, as a political analyst, talk to me a little bit about the significance of this debate.
Well, normally there wouldn't be much significance. The vice presidential debates are usually, uh, from a strategic standpoint, ones where the vice presidential candidates don't want to make news. They don't want to say anything stupid. They don't want to blow anything up. They're surrogates for the top of the ticket, and they simply want to get this done and get out of there and not have anybody talk about it the next day. This is going to be a little different, obviously. From the outside, this vice presidential debate has been called by some people, and I think this is probably a little too much hyperbole, one of the most important vice presidential debates in history. I think simply because of the not only just the age of the candidates, was because of last week's presidential debate was such a disaster, was a more likened to a professional wrestling cage match than it was a political debate. And I think voters want to hear positions of both campaigns without Trump and Biden there. But having said that, I'm not so sure the strategy for both of these vice presidential candidates changes that much. I think we're going to see Vice President Pence move Senator Harris to the left and tag Joe Biden as being more liberal than he comes off as being. One of the concerns with Trump voters is how far left Joe Biden could be moved. And I think Mike Pence is going to try to make that case. For Senator Harris, it's all going to be about Donald Trump. I think Mike Pence will just simply be the mouthpiece, the stand-in for Donald Trump. And I think she's going to go after Donald Trump's policies, his lack of response to the coronavirus, the economy, all kinds of issues. And these vice presidential candidates will have an opportunity to not just frame their campaigns, but their opponents' campaigns. So I think this, from an outside standpoint, this is going to be incredibly important. The viewership may be more off the charts than any other vice presidential debate. But the strategy is going to be very clear, I think, on both of the parts of both of these vice presidential candidates.
So, it sounds like you're saying that this debate presents very high stakes for both sides.
I think it presents high stakes in the fact that they can't blow it. You know, it's tough being a vice presidential candidate because you have your own opinions. Especially that was the case with Senator Harris. Senator Harris debated Joe Biden. And one of the most replayed moments of the Democratic debates was when she challenged Joe Biden on his vote many years ago for against rather busing desegregation, and and she had no problems going after Joe Biden's policies. Where Mike Pence has a different situation. Mike Pence was not a presidential candidate. He was chosen from the outside as governor of Indiana and a former congressman. So he didn't have that issue. But Vice President Harris will. And it's tough being a VP candidate because you have to remember that you're not at the top of the ticket. You're simply a surrogate and stand-in for the candidate who is. And I'm sure Vice President Pence will make a case about Senator Harris being more to the left, embracing progressive ideas than Joe Biden is, and tagging Biden with the ideas that Harris has. And it's going to be interesting to see how Senator Harris plays that.
I think there's a lot of high interest in this debate now. According to a few national polls following the presidential debate, Biden is holding the lead in 6 swing states. So tell me, how crucial is it for battleground states ahead of the vice presidential debate?
Well, I think what we're seeing in battleground states is a very, very, very low number of undecided voters or voters who may change their minds. That's very different from what it was in 2016. I've seen some of these battleground state polls, and it's amazing that only 2 or 3% of likely voters say that they're undecided. It's pretty amazing that 98% of voters may have already made up their minds. And on one hand, it really doesn't matter what happens at the debates. But I think what both campaigns realize is that this is going to be a turnout election. It's not so much about swaying voters' minds, it's about getting them to vote. Trump voters are very solid behind him. I've used the analogy that I believe Trump voters are married to him. Joe Biden's voters are merely dating. So Biden needs to close that gap, put the ring on the finger, if you will, and excite his base. And I think his base is more excited after the election than it was, or after the debate last week, rather than it was before the debate. I think their base is now getting to the point where they're more enthusiastic. And so Senator Harris tomorrow night is going to have to keep pushing that, keep making the case that this is really all about Donald Trump, and that Democrats can feel comfortable about a Biden-Harris ticket, where the vice president is going to push the Biden campaign to the left is unacceptable, hoping to gin up support among Trump voters.
So with less than 4 weeks until the election, what advice can you give to voters who may be still undecided? What key topics should they be paying attention to?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot about how are they impacted by the policies of both candidates. You know, one of the most disappointing things in this election season, one of the most disappointing aspects of the last presidential debate, and I hope there's an opportunity to resolve this in future debates here coming up, is that we really don't know where these candidates are going to take the nation. It is all about the past. For Trump, we really don't know where his economic plan is. We don't know what his healthcare plan looks like. We don't know what his economic plan looks like. We don't know how he wants to tackle the coronavirus. Joe Biden has thrown out bits and pieces here and there of where he wants to lead America. But it's been very strange. This has been a personality election. This has not been an election about America's future, which I think is very disappointing. And I think, quite frankly, that's why people are going to tune in to the vice presidential debate. We deserve to hear where these campaigns are going to take America. We haven't heard it yet, and then make up our minds accordingly. I think a lot of the wild card here for both campaigns is the impact of the coronavirus. We're seeing Trump's poll numbers mirror almost the surges in coronavirus. If you look at Florida, for instance, which is the largest battleground state out there with 29 electoral votes, Trump's poll numbers went down as the coronavirus surge increased this summer. And as the coronavirus cases declined in Florida, Trump's poll numbers got better. We're seeing that exactly the opposite happening in Wisconsin. Coronavirus is surging, Trump's poll numbers are declining. So this is really going to be a wild card as to who turns out and who doesn't. And it may end up being where the coronavirus, what the coronavirus situation is like where you live if you're an undecided voter.
Mark Mill, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think I've covered as much as I can. This is going to be a turnout election. I know that sounds cliche. Every election, every campaign says that, but it really is going to be. And in a lot of these battleground states, there are only 6 battleground states that really matter. Florida is at the top of the list, but you have Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, and Florida. It's really going to be about turnout. And in those states, Republicans tend to turn out at a higher rate than Democrats do. And that's going to be a real challenge for the Biden campaign and Democrats going forward. So that's why I think one of the reasons why this vice presidential debate is going to be so important tomorrow night.